It's my reset, walking head high, that's the preset. Got the J in the chair, you can breathe it. Exhale, we gon' turn that hurt into detail. It's my reset, new page, new frame, hit the refresh. If you made it to the screen, that's a big flex. Type here in the box, that's progress. That's progress. You've been carrying that weight since the group chat. Smiling in the pic, but you knew that. Heart say break, mind say keep going. Now you in the lobby and the lights start glowing. Edge laid, hoodie on, still holy. Tear stains on the sleeve, still cozy. Black girl doc with the big gold hoops. Say your name and the chain get loose. It's my reset, walking head high, that's the preset. The J in the chat, you can breathe it. Exhale, we gon' turn that hurt into detail. It's my reset, new page, new frame, hit the refresh. If you made it to the screen, that's a big flex. Type here in the box, that's progress. That's progress. We wave when we wade through the deep end. We brave when we break, then we deepen. You're safe in the space when you log in. Drop one word for your check-in. It's my reset, walking head high, that's the preset. The J in the chat, you can breathe it. Exhale, we gon' turn that hurt into detail. It's my reset, new page, new frame, hit the refresh. If you made it to the screen, that's a big flex. Type here in the box, that's progress. That's progress.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the reset. Let me check my settings, make sure y'all can hear me. Drop it in the chat if you can. I like to check. Gotta double check. Because if I do a whole episode and y'all can't hear me, I will be so upset. So let me check that out. Welcome as everybody is joining in. Drop where you come from. Let's see where everybody is coming from today. All right, it looks like we live. It looks like y'all can hear me. I love it. Let me share it on my page. All right. Awesome. Okay, we are good to go. I just like to check on my settings in the beginning so I don't have to worry about that stuff as we continue. Okay, so it's been another week. We had a good talk last time, which I think was pretty cool. Yeah, so let's get into it. I done changed something in my settings and I don't know what I did. But I think we're good. Okay. So, welcome to the reset. We do this every Sunday at 12. It's one of those things that just makes you sit down for a minute, or if you're like still doing something, to listen to it, check your self-awareness, and then hopefully you have a better week or at least more awareness for the week, right? My co-host decided to join me. I'm about to put him back down on the floor though. So this is where we take those W.T.F moments that might come up and we turn them into breakthroughs. So I'm Dr. Arielle Jordan. If you haven't been here before, I'm an Army vet and a therapist. So today's episode is called Your Brain Takes Notes. And I'm not talking about the kind that you took in school and then you never opened again. That's not what we talk about. I'm talking about the notes that your brain has been collecting over time from losses, from deployments, from relationships, promotions, heartbreaks, you name it. These are moments where typically somebody told you who you were, whether they meant to or not. And so your brain wrote that down. But here's the thing. Some of those notes might be a little bit outdated, and that's what we want to check on. You could be operating off of information that your brain picked up years ago before things changed, and then nobody sent the memo that it's time to update them. So that's what we're here to talk about today. We're going to talk about what your brain might be holding on to and why updating those notes can take some intention, and how you actually start to make those edits. It's also PTSD Awareness Month, which is partially why that was on my mind. Just working with people that are in their healing journey, and so this isn't necessarily a PTSD conversation. This applies pretty broadly. When we talk about trauma, grief, growing up, all of it can leave notes. So let's get into that. So, disclaimer, let me do my disclaimer. Quick reminder, I am a therapist, but I am not your therapist. So, this is meant to be a conversation, not treatment. We can kind of just sit, I have my tea, and we can just talk about things that are real rather than, sweeping them under the rug. So, so if you're in crisis, I need you to call or text 988 because someone will help you immediately. And if that's what we need, then that's what we need. It doesn't mean that it'll always be like that. It might be a temporary situation where we need someone. So 988 and someone will be there for you. If you are military or veteran, 988 plus one, you'll get somebody that is trained in military culture. And sometimes we need that. So that's my disclaimer. Now let's have a conversation. So what I thought about this week was like what gets written down in the first place. Like your brain isn't taking notes on facts all the time. Sometimes it's taking notes on patterns, on what kept you safe, or like what made sense at the time. And so some examples are like people leave. If I ask for help, it's a weakness. I have to handle things all by myself. If something good happens, something hard is probably coming up next. I have to stay on guard or something gets missed. So if any of those resonated with you, and of course that's not all inclusive, that's just kind of like what I've heard over the week, just talking to different people about this topic. So not all inclusive list, there can be more, right? But if any of those felt like, oh, okay, that kind of resonated with me, that's okay. When your brain wrote these notes, they made sense. They were based on real information in a specific time or place. The thing is, sometimes the brain files these notes under permanent policy instead of what's true for that situation. And so we have to be able to separate that. And unless we kind of like sit down and have these type of conversations, usually we're just, on autopilot, just trying to make it. So some of us have notes from years back and they're still running in the background like they're current. And so we want to just check on that kind of stuff. If you've been part of a unit, you probably know what I mean. There's always some procedure that's been around forever. And then when you ask why, somebody says, that's just how we've always done it. Nobody remembers the real reason. It just kept going. And brains can do something similar. So we're just checking on that kind of stuff. So I know a lot of people, like not even just military, but you could be in like corporate office and they do that too, where it's like, it's just always been like that. And so we keep it like that. No, we can update it. So I'll give you a personal one. We'll get a little deep real quick. After I lost my daughter, my brain wrote a note. Like, if I slow down and really feel this, then I won't be able to function. And it made sense at that time. And actually, there were days where it was really hard to function. But just thinking about like my community, and I had to keep moving. Like I couldn't just not function, right? And years later, like that note was still kind of active. It's like, keep going, don't sit in it, stay busy. Even after I'd built more capacity to actually sit with it, the note didn't update on its own. I had to go back and revise it. So I had to take a second to really like see, right? I even tell my clients this sometimes too. Like, you might be like afraid to cry or something like that. And it's like, has there ever been a time where you've started crying and never stopped? Like weeks, months went by, you're still crying while we're talking right now. No. It's temporary that we have to feel these things, to the extent that we have to feel them. So that's just a little snippet about some of the work that I've had to do personally to be able to be okay. So I don't just speak from like book knowledge or she went to college so she knows it all. Absolutely not. None of us know it all. But I can share from my experience and I can try to help you do things a little bit better. So take a second and think about yourself for a moment. Is there a note in your brain that has been running that you can trace back to a moment or like a season in your life? And if so, you can share yes, you can share no. You don't have to explain because that's not something we want to get into. But just, if it comes to mind and you can relate, think about that. Where are we running some outdated narratives? So once you've thought of that, it's just something to touch on. It's just something to recognize, because if we don't recognize it, then we can't change it or we can't do better. So something for you to think about. Okay. So here's the part that explains why. So brains are great at taking notes. They're brains, right? I mean, brains are wonderful. Updating them can take a little bit of effort though. So someone goes through a betrayal and the brain writes a note. Be careful who you trust with things that matter. Makes sense. That is based on something real that happened. Years later, this same person is in a different relationship, a different life, but the note is still active. So there's still some guardedness, some holding back, even though the situation that created that note is long over. The circumstances changed, but the note is still running. That's what we want to think about. That's an example, just an example of how our brains can operate sometimes. But here's the part that's actually good news. Brains can update the notes. And so that's what I want to keep coming back to, because we talk a lot about how grief or trauma or, any horrible things can change the brain, but healing can too. And that's the update that those notes have to go through. That's the update that we have to be intentional about. So it's not just a hopeful idea. Like literally that's how brains work. It's called neuroplasticity. And basically it means that your brain can build new neural pathways and rely less on old ones based on what gets practiced and what gets reinforced over time. So that's the kind of part that we need to, kind of hone in on, right? What are we reinforcing? What are we practicing? Because if it's not what we want to be reinforcing or practicing, maybe we make a change and start to go that way. So I'm not going to turn this into a lecture on brain structures, because who would turn into that on W.T.F Nation Radio? However, I'm going to talk about how I think about it instead. And maybe that will be helpful for you. So brains don't really delete old notes. They just start referencing the new ones more often. So if information is repeated enough, it starts to go that route. So I'll give you an example. I always tell people, like, we all know our way home. Like when we're driving, we always know our way home. So usually it's pretty similar. We turn down this street, we turn down that street, and then we make it home, right? So we do that automatically. Sure, we have to think about it like a little bit, but typically we know our way home. That is a neural pathway. I know my way home. I don't have to think about it very much, and I get home. So let's say, I don't know, we move to the neighborhood on the other side. You now have to think about making a different turn to get to this new house that you live in. So we were on autopilot, not really thinking very much, going to this house that we've lived in, for a long time. But then we make a change. So now, even though I might be going down the same road, I have to now make a different turn. And so as I make this different turn, I'm building a different neural pathway. So hopefully that makes sense. Sometimes I explain it that way because we all know our way home. So if I move to the other side of the neighborhood, I will have to think, oh shoot, I don't live over there no more. I gotta change directions. So thinking about new information. So if an old note says for somebody that people leave, that note doesn't get erased just by thinking really hard about how that's not always true. It gets updated by going through actual experiences where people stick around, and the brain starts to notice that over time until like that note, it reaches, for that one first rather than the other one. But it has to be repetition. It has to happen over and over again, right? So something similar happens after trauma. And this is the part that I want to tie into PTSD Awareness Month. A lot gets said about how trauma changes the brain, and it does, right? That is very real. Brains adapt to keep people safe. And sometimes those adaptations stick around longer than the original situation. And I think that's what doesn't get talked about much, is that the brains can heal. Because I hear a lot all the time about how this changes your brain. And it's almost like it's a life sentence. And I promise you, I used to think that way too. But what I've learned by going through grief and trauma, myself, my own story, and we all have a story, and going through the healing process, and doing that really, really difficult work and falling apart and picking myself up and rebuilding, several different times, several different versions of me, we won't act like it's a pretty process, where it's all sunshine and rainbows. It's not. But it's worth it. It's worth it. And that's what I do know, is that healing changes the brain as well. So therapy, obviously I'm a therapist, so I'm going to use that as an example. Therapy that actually processes trauma, like EMDR, the eye movement therapy, which is a lot of what I do for veterans and first responders, and also is what helped me change my own story and my own narrative. It's not just talking about feelings. There is research that shows how the brain stores and accesses certain memories. So the note that gets refiled, it stops getting triggered the same way. So another thing, while we're here, we will have triggers. We will have triggers. I had so many people think that we're not supposed to be triggered. No, we're human beings. Like, we are imperfect human beings at that. We will be triggered. We will. We just will. Now, how you respond to that trigger, that's your responsibility, right? If I respond from an unhealed place, it's going to look much different than if I respond from a healed place. So that's what we want to think about. We don't want to think about like getting rid of triggers or everything's going to be perfect. That's just not realistic. But we can make some changes. So if the brain can change in response to something hard, it can also change in response to healing. And that's not me just being hopeful. It's how it tends to work, and so that note might need some updating, and updating is possible. So let's make this practical. Let's get into how you start to work with that note. Thank you for sending me some roses in the chat. I just saw them. Sorry, I'm late. All right. So how do we even work with this note, right? She's been talking about this note for the last however many minutes. How do we do this? I'm about to get into that. Okay. So first, self-awareness. Notice the note. It may sound very simple, but it's not, because sometimes we just don't notice. Sometimes it's a blind spot. And I know you've probably seen people that maybe they do that. But yeah, we're not going to do that. We're going to notice the note, or at least do our best to try, right? Sorry, I'm trying to see what happened to my camera here, so bear with me a moment. Oh, I'm not very tech savvy when it comes to the program that we use, and I don't know. I don't know. I'm gonna do what I know how to do first. Okay. Sorry about that. I'm over here accidentally clicking stuff. Anyways, we're gonna get back to the first note. Okay, get down. Sorry, first noticing the note. Okay, step one, you're gonna notice the note. Okay, so you're going through your day and you notice a thought that feels less like a thought and more like a fact. Something that feels true automatically, no questions asked. I have to do everything myself. If I show emotion, that changes how people see me. Things are going well, so something's probably going to go wrong. Asking for help isn't really an option for me. If it feels like a fixed fact about how the world works, that might be a note worth looking at. Okay? So think about it. And in your life, some of these narratives that we have, what happens if we start to question them? I had to do everything for myself. Is that really true? Maybe you have to do a lot of things for yourself. It's not saying throw it out, but what happens if you ask for help? What happens if you don't do everything yourself? What happens if you hire a service to do it for you? What happens if you start to question, if you get a little curious about it? Let's just see, right? Let's try something different. So that's the first step. The first step is to notice it. We have to notice it. We can't make any changes if we don't notice it. If we're walking around with our blinders on, just thinking we know everything, or just accepting, whatever comes, then I don't know. A lot of times people say, I don't even feel like the life I'm living is mine. And it's like, oh, okay. Well, why not? Let's trace back to why, right? And then so once we notice it, we can do something about it. So going to my second point, get curious about where it came from. So we're not trying to assign blame, because a lot of times people will think it means, oh, it's my parents' fault. My parents are the reason why I'm like this, or it's so-and-so's fault, or whatever. I won't say it doesn't matter whose fault it is, but I will say that's not going to help you. So we're not looking to assign blame anywhere. We just need to understand it. Was it tied to a specific season of life, a specific experience, something that happened once, and then we started to generalize it to everything? Those are the things that we need to think about. Because if we trace it back, you realize, oh, that note made a lot of sense back then. It was protecting me from something. And that's worth acknowledging. The note did its job at that time. So that's what we want to think about. We want to think about a lot of times, thinking about what survival mode we had to be in during our season of struggle. So if you had a season of struggle, which we all have, different levels, right? But if you think about it, There's something that you had to do to survive through that. Whether it was good or bad, right? I won't even say good or bad. I'll say healthy versus not healthy. You did something. You did something to get through that season, all of us, right? So, did it continue or did it just get you through the season? So that's something you want to think about, because a lot of times something that got us through that season isn't what we need right now, because we're in a new season. Something different is happening in life. We've moved forward in our healing journey, hopefully. If not, let's get on it, right? But it's worth acknowledging, oh, okay, at that time, I needed to be that extreme. Oh, okay. But right now, I don't. Okay, so how do I change that? That's getting curious about it. So, step one, we're going to notice it. What kind of narratives am I running that feel true but may not necessarily be true? And then get curious about where it came from. Where did that originate? How did that start? Oh, it started way back when that thing happened to me and I had to do this. Okay, now we're making progress. Now we have some forward movement. That's what we want. And the third thing is ask if it's still doing that job right now. That's the real question. Is the note still useful? Or is it running in a situation that doesn't quite fit anymore? Think about it. So, sometimes the answer is yes. It still applies. I need this. And that's fine. Keep it. And sometimes the answer is, this made sense before, but it's costing me more than it's helping me right now. And that's where the revising comes in. You need to notice that. Revising doesn't mean that you're flipping the note to the total opposite overnight. It's more like updating the wording. Instead of I have to do everything myself, maybe it becomes I can handle a lot. And I can also let people help sometimes. Smaller shift, more workable, more likely to actually stick. So I have people, all the time say that I have to do everything myself. And then when we start to question it, it's not necessarily true. And so it's I can handle a lot and I can let people help sometimes. And then they might start to find things that people can help with. A lot of times that particular one is a control issue. I have to do everything myself because I want it done a certain way. And it's like, oh, but that's also causing you burnout. Can we make a change here? Are there maybe smaller things that other people can help you with? And usually the answer is yes. And it's hard, but at the same time, we can do it. We can make a change. We can make a shift. It's just difficult, right? But it's not impossible. So the thing is, what are we going to do when we start to notice these things? I have to recognize it. I have to get curious about where it even came from. And is it still doing the job? Is it still doing the job now? Because a lot of times we find that note is outdated and that we need to update it. So think about some things in your life where, maybe they're not helpful now, but they used to be. And there's no shame, there's no blame. Like literally, this is just a conversation to get you thinking. And I want, hopefully, you to transform that, right? But we can't do that without awareness. So think about it as you move throughout your week. We do this on Sundays for a reason, because we're getting ready to go into the next week. I try to be consistent and show up every week so that there could be something, right? Some sort of a micro change or something like that, right? So just catch one this week. What note is in the background that you hear running, and catch it. a lot of times when we have conversations like this, like if you're really tuned in and you're listening, not that you have to like sit and listen, but even if you're just hearing me while you're washing the dishes, a lot of times because we even took it there, your brain is going to notice it and you're going to start to question it, and you're going to be like, huh, I have to do everything myself. I just said that to myself and we just had an episode about that last week. Cool. Notice it. That's a win. Even if you do nothing else, that is a win. Okay? And the next thing is to really self-reflect. Okay, so why do I think I have to do everything myself? Who told me that? Where did I learn that, right? Because we're not just born thinking I got to do everything myself. Because when you're born, you're an infant, and you can't do things yourself. So you need somebody else to take care of you. What happened? What happened along the way? And this is just one example. I'm just using this example so you can wrap your head around how this works. But something happened for that narrative to take place of I have to do everything myself. Something happened. Trace it back. Where'd it come from? If you can't, a therapist can help you. Trace it back. A journal can help you. Trace it back. Whatever works for you. You can read a book that guides you through how to trace it back. But get curious about it. And after you get curious about it, recognize what job it's doing for you today in current time. And is it helpful or is it harmful? Is it still serving you the way it used to? Because most of the time the answer is no. Most of the time we'll realize that something is not updated. So I had a comment come in, but I'm trying to see the whole thing. Okay. Yeah, and I mean, that's very unfortunate that happened to you. But at the same time, there's still healing that can take place. I'm not gonna get into, the hows or the whats, but that's just very unfortunate that happened, and I'm sorry that happened to you. I hope that your healing journey has started, and if not, then maybe this is something that you can take further to make sure that you're okay, or get some assistance there. But as far as like the outcome, we can't change it. Even though it's horrible, we can't change it. And I feel for you. Your story, you're not alone as well. I hear terrible things like that a lot. But also, it's still our work with how we carry on and how we carry forward, even when horrible things happen. So my heart goes out to you, and I really do wish you the best on your healing journey as well, because you still have to be okay no matter what has happened to you. So not to downplay what's happened or anything like that, because like I said, it's very horrible, but it's also your duty, to continue to work on yourself. So, okay. That is the 3 things that I wanted to share with you all as far as how do we do this? How do we update these outdated narratives? And so I hope it was helpful. Here's what I want you to walk away with. Your brain has been taking notes your whole life. Oh, you are so welcome. You are so welcome. I hate to hear it, but also I know that there's, healing even with that. So your brain's been taking notes your whole life, right? All these notes. Think about, I don't know if y'all had those old filing cabinets, or if y'all seen, what is the movie? I think it's Bruce Almighty, where Jim Carrey like hits the filing cabinet and like all the files come out for his whole life. If you haven't seen it, it's a funny movie. Maybe you should watch it. I don't know. I enjoyed it. But that filing cabinet, it always makes me think of like our whole life has been filed. There's so many files, right? So many notes. Some of them are still really useful, and some of them might be outdated. So you just want to check. It's just how the brain works. It's just data. They hold on to what kept us safe. And so when you're thinking about what kept you safe, it starts to make a little bit more sense of why you made that choice or why you have that note. But the part that matters is that brains can update. Healing isn't just an idea, it's a process that can actually change your brain and how we operate. The same way the hard experience leaves a mark, healing can too. So I want to drill that in everybody's brains because I hear one side a lot. And I also have done some healing work myself to get to where I'm at. And I know that looks a lot different from when I didn't. Okay? So you think about a scar. You think about how you fall and you scrape your knee. You have a scar or scab or whatever, right? But it heals. You know that it heals, but maybe you still look down and see the scar. That's kind of how our brains work too. We just don't think of it that way. Our brains can also heal, but there might be a scar, and that's okay. We just look at it. It doesn't affect us. It's not an open wound. So think of it, as like the natural healing process that would happen if you fell and scraped your knee. So if you've been feeling stuck on something, it might not be that you're stuck forever. It might be that there's a note running that hasn't been updated yet. And updating is possible. Catch it, get curious about it, and ask, does this still fit? That's the work. That's the doable work. That's what we can do versus what we can't do, right? So if this resonated, I hope that, you start to feel yourself move forward or get the help that you need to help you move forward, because it's not a life sentence. The way that it changed, it can change another way too. We just have to make the choice and be intentional about it. So everything that I do outside of my radio show is on bio.Arielle, Arielle, N for Nicole, Jordan, JORDAN.com. So you can check me out there to learn more about my therapy practice or my nonprofit, where I try to do scholarships for veterans to get education or healing, as well as donations. I'm always seeking sponsors, speaking engagements, and things like that. I work with people one-to-one through EMDR intensives. That's a lot of what helps people with updating those deeper notes that we were talking about, especially around trauma. I train clinicians. I run the Jordan Effect. That's my nonprofit that focuses on mental health support for veterans, first responders, and underserved communities. It's PTSD Awareness Month. So if something you or someone else is like navigating, there's support out there. There is a reason for hope. The brain that adapted to protect you can also adapt towards healing. So think about that. Take care of yourself this week. Remember, resilience is not optional. It is the mission. Also, check out the other shows that W.T.F Nation Radio has to offer. I have those on my closing screen, so you'll be able to see them and check them out. But other than that, you got this. I'm Dr. J. This is the Reset, where we take those WTF moments and we turn them into breakthroughs. Have a good night, y'all.